Alright, so this is my mess tonight for soldering up a new revision of the Arduino boards. So I've got my little soldering iron, voltmeter to check some grounds and resistance after I solder the circuits. And I'm soldering in some wires that I had on the old setup. I've got a little table here that shows my older pinout, and as I update the pinout, I update the table. And so this particular connector is pulling in all of the inputs from the sensors that I've added. So it's like I've got a barometric pressure sensor that I've added to the board here, the decay speed sensor from the turbocharger. I've got the wideband oxygen sensor from the Innovate LC2, the K-type thermocouple from the EGT. I got a Bosch T-map sensor, so it does both pressure and temperature. I've got a 3-bar GM map sensor, and then a couple just fluid pressure sensors, one for oil pressure, and then one for exhaust manifold pressure, as well as intercooler temperature, which is the intercooler coolant temp. So on the last two wires here, soldering to this board, so the wires are coming in from the top of the board, and I'm trying to route them so that they will all package nice in the harness, keeping them well organized. So the next guy here is this, what is this, blue and gray? Yep, and so that's the intake manifold pressure sensor signal from the 3-bar GM style map sensor. So I will strip off just a little bit off the end there, just enough to poke through the board. He is going to go in this round. He's going to go to what is that? Analog input 9. So A9. So I will route him down to A9 here. I'll use this little alligator clip on this handle, nothing fancy, but just to hold him in place and keep the wire nice and perpendicular to the board. Make sure he's not poking out anywhere funny. And then I take this guy, I wipe him off on my rag or towel, I dip him in some paste, solder paste. Wipe him off again, just make sure he's nice and clean, and then make sure he's sticking through the board here, and I heat him up, and I add a little bit of solder. There we go. Make sure he's nice and shiny, and then that is that guy. And so I've got one more, which is, I think, this brown and yellow guy. So brown and yellow, let me update this. GM 3-bar map sensor, A9. And then brown and yellow, oil pressure. It used to be an A9, so now it's actually going to be an A10. So just a small change there. So do the same thing. Strip off just a hair, put him through the pin hole, realize that my alligator clip is wanting to fall out of this little thing. No, this is definitely not a professional setup, but it works. Alright, so he's there. Make sure he's nice and perpendicular to the board and fully seated. A little bit poking through on this side, clean him off with this flux. Get him nice and hot. it'll warm up nice. And the solder. All right. So that's done. That's A10. So, I think I have now completed this package, which is an assortment of goodies. So, the base guy is this Arduino Mega, which is the green board here. Just temporarily, I have the CAN bus shield pinned into him up top. This is a shield board that I've added all of the wiring to this time around. And in doing so, I've also added a step-down converter to convert the 12 volts from the car to a voltage level that will power the Arduino, the guy down there. And then I've also added a dedicated 5-volt power supply that supplies all of the 5-volt sensors. So it's got a very consistent voltage supply that will provide consistent outputs from the sensors. And then all of the wiring that's directly to the board is either to provide 12 volts to these step-down converters, common grounds, and then the rest are analog inputs to the Arduino, as well as digital outputs from the Arduino. So these digital outputs, there are 8 of them, and they control relays that are mounted at the back of the vehicle to power various 12-volt circuits that are higher current. So this is the next revision. You can see the little barometric pressure sensor there. Just mounted to the board because he can measure pressure from really anywhere. So it's okay if he sits inside the car. The rest of the sensors, of course, have to be mounted nicely in the vehicle. So that's round, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7, and we'll make sure this works, and then we'll go to round 8. Yay!